My name is Patrick Hayes. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, a serving reservist, and a social worker. My military story started in 2006. I was kind of a non-traditional new soldier. The company I was working for had let us know that they were going to be closing their Charlotte office. It was during the recession, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to continue working in the logistics field, trying to find a job. And I read a newspaper article that one day that said that the Army was short on officers and was issuing age waivers. And I said, well, you know, I've always kind of regretted that I didn't join the military, and if I'm going to do it, now is the time. So I went down and I talked to a recruiter. That was in September of 2006, and on January 2nd of 2007, I shipped for basic training at Fort Benning, which was followed by Officer Candidate School. I branched as an ordnance officer and attended Officer Basic course at Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland. Once I completed my training pipeline, I was stationed at Fort Bragg with the 18th Fires Brigade. I was with 3rd of the 321 Field Artillery. Shortly after arriving, we began preparations for deployment to Afghanistan. Deployed to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom in 2010. And when I returned from Afghanistan, I was given PCS orders to Fort Lee, Virginia. And that's really where the story that I want to talk about starts. When I got to Fort Lee, I was given the opportunity to take command of a company at the Ordnance School. It was a little bit of an unusual company. It was not your traditional AIT company made up of brand new privates and soldiers. It was a headquarters company where I had the bulk of the permanent party for the Ordnance School, and I also had lieutenants going through phase 1 of EOD school and prior service soldiers who were reclassing into a new MOS. Typically had around 300 soldiers on my books. And when you're in a training environment, you expect that you're going to separate some soldiers. Some people just aren't a good fit for the Army. Sometimes people are injured in training. For whatever reason, you know, there's a fair amount of attrition from AIT units. But what I found was that the soldiers I was putting out of the Army were not my trainees. They were my permanent party soldiers. I had a large number of senior non-commissioned officers, E6 through E7, sometimes E8s, 10 to 12, 15 years in the Army that were getting in a lot of trouble. They were coming up hot on urinalysis, DUI, domestic violence, divorce, you name it, I saw it in my instructors, and got really good at chaptering people out of the Army. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. This is not what should be going on, what should be happening to these men and women, and quickly came to realize that the behaviors I was seeing and what we were punishing them for through the UCMJ were symptoms of deeper problems that were related to multiple combat tours. So I started working very closely with the behavioral health therapist on post, the Army Substance Abuse Program, and slowly the culture within my unit and within the Ordnance School started to change. People were willing to put their hand up and say, hey, I have some problems, I need some help. And I started to see the needle move, and I wasn't putting so many soldiers out of the Army. And people were doing better, and morale was better, and it was really the most fulfilling thing that I did while I was in service. About that time, I had gotten remarried. My new wife was a former naval officer. She's a family physician. She was not ready to be an Army wife. She had kind of put that phase of her life behind her, and so we had a conversation that it was time for me to transition off of active duty and into the reserves. And as I started to once again try and figure out what do I want to do with my life, I realized that the single most fulfilling thing that I had done in the Army was helping those soldiers, and I wanted to continue to do that. And so I began looking at social work programs. I found one close to our home in Concord, North Carolina at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and I completed my MSW. And then when I graduated, I went to work for an organization called Veterans Bridge Home in Charlotte, North Carolina. And now I do the same thing that I did when I was in command. I help soldiers, Marines, airmen, veterans that have transitioned who maybe their transition didn't go so well. And we connect them with resources and we provide those same supports. And it's continued to be very fulfilling. It's one of the best jobs I've had, and it's just a privilege to help work with people who have served. And I don't think I would have ever found this path if it hadn't been for my experience and my time in the Army and having that opportunity to, in some small way, make a difference in my soldiers' lives. And I'm just very thankful for having had that opportunity, the opportunity to serve our country, and the chance to continue to do that as a civilian. And you think about the people that sacrificed, made the ultimate sacrifice, made a bigger sacrifice than I have. I mean, I think everyone who deploys, everyone who puts on the uniform is changed by it in some way. And we get hung up on terms about combat veteran or wartime veteran or Cold War veteran, but really when you sign those papers, you don't know what lies in store for you. You know, we as soldiers, as Marines, we don't choose whether we go or not. And everyone who signed the papers and wore the uniform was willing to go. And it's really, it brings you into a very elite fraternity. And you know, I meet people on a regular basis that I'm just in awe of. And to think that I share that component of service with them is really humbling, and it's really one of the things I'm proudest of in my life. One of the biggest things that I see veterans struggle with, and civilian hiring managers, companies, people, is figuring out how to meet in the middle and what skills translate. And veterans bring an enormous amount of discipline, intelligence, training, resolve, leadership skills to the table, but they may not have the vocabulary to let people know what those skills are. We get so focused on the mission, we get so focused on closing and destroying with the enemy and using terms like violence of action and different things that can be a little off-putting to people at times. But when you really look at what those terms mean, it's enthusiasm, it's doing things completely and taking ownership of things. And if you can translate that leadership into words and actions that people in the civilian world can understand, the potential that veterans bring to politics, to local government, to schools, to employers is unlimited. And so just open your minds and don't get caught in the broken veteran narrative. It's a really easy place to get sucked into, but look at the strengths and look at the positive attributes that veterans bring to the table. And even if that man or woman sitting in front of you is not 100% on paper the perfect fit for that job, look at the soft skills, look at the intangibles, and give them a chance. My name is Patrick Hayes, and this was my story.